The Mike Wagner Show is powered by Sonic Web Studios. If you're looking to start or upgrade your online presence, visit www.sonicwebstudios.com for all of your online needs. Sonic Web Studios specializes in custom web design, app development, social networking, search engine optimization, domain registration, email marketing, online stores, and more. Since our birth, we have been designing and developing immaculate websites and providing web solutions which are a cut above the rest. As a leading web designing enterprise, we have a team of extremely talented web designers who are well-focused and have the experience of working on multiple web developing platforms such as PHP, Magento, custom WordPress, and more. Sonic Web Studios has been helping businesses of all kinds, whether big, small, established, or startup, impress their audiences with exemplary web solutions. We don't just create beautiful and functional websites. We give you a complete online solution with the main goal of enhancing your yearly revenues. We aim to give your business the online exposure and brand acknowledgement that will help you in achieving increased conversions leading to profitable sales. Call 1-800-303-3960 or visit us online at www.sonicwebstudios.com to get started today. Mention the Mike Wagner Show and get 20% off your project. Sonic Web Studios. Take your image to the next level. The Mike Wagner Show is powered by Sonic Web Studios. If you're looking to start or upgrade your online presence, visit www.sonicwebstudios.com for all of your online needs. Sonic Web Studios specializes in custom web design, app development, social networking, search engine optimization, domain registration, email marketing, online stores, and more. Since our birth, we have been designing and developing immaculate websites and providing web solutions which are a cut above the rest. As a leading web designing enterprise, we have a team of extremely talented web designers who are well-focused and have the experience of working on multiple web developing platforms such as PHP, Magento, custom WordPress, and more. Sonic Web Studios has been helping businesses of all kinds, whether big, small, established, or startup, impress their audiences with exemplary web solutions. We don't just create beautiful and functional websites. We give you a complete online solution with the main goal of enhancing your yearly revenues. We aim to give your business the online exposure and brand acknowledgement that will help you in achieving increased conversions leading to profitable sales. Call 1-800-303-3960 or visit us online at www.sonicwebstudios.com to get started today. Mention the Mike Wagner Show and get 20% off your project. Sonic Web Studios. Take your image to the next level.
It's now time for the Mike Wagner Show, powered by Sonic Web Studios. Visit online at sonicwebstudios.com for all your needs. The Mike Wagner Show can be heard on Spreaker, Spotify, iHeartRadio, YouTube, iTunes, Anchor FM, Radio Public, and the MikeWagnerShow.com. Mike brings you great guests and interesting people from all across the globe. So sit back, relax, and enjoy another great episode of the Mike Wagner Show.
Hey everybody, it's Mike from the Mike Wagner Show, powered by Sonic Web Studios. Visit online at sonicwebstudios.com for all your needs. Look at a professional website without breaking your budget. Sonic Web Studios is the answer. Sonic Web Studios offers fast, affordable custom web designs that blow the competition away. Call today, 1-800-303-3960. That's 1-800-303-3960. Or email to support@sonicwebstudios.com. Mention the Mike Wagner Show, get 20% off your first project. Sonic Web Studios, take your image to the next level. Also, the Mike Wagner Show can be heard on the MikeWagnerShow.com. You can check our Facebook page at facebook.com/The Mike Wagner Show. You can download and listen on Facebook, SoundCloud, Spreaker, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Also on Anchor FM, Radio Public, iTunes, Google Play. Also on Apple and over 25 podcast platforms. Take the Mike Wagner Show with you on any mobile device. Subscribe to the Mike Wagner Show on the YouTube channel. Also follow the Mike Wagner Show on Instagram and Twitter today. We're here with a wonderful author based out of New York City. He's the lead historian consultant for Apple TV, also a docu-series on Visible out on TV. He also he archives in Philadelphia. Here's some fireworks in the all set to go here, so he's just ready here. So the first edition of this great book we'll be talking about is the semifinalist for the Stonewall Book Award and talks about an epic battle that's going on American TV, going back in the 50s, up the 90s, and today as well, too. And here to talk about the book, Alternate Channels, Queer Images on 20th Century TV. Ladies and gentlemen, live from the Plush Studios of New York City, author Stephen Capsuto. Stephen, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thanks for joining us today.
Hi, Mike. Thanks for inviting me.
Oh, thank you. And it's great to have you on as well, too. So you've done this book, Alternate Channels, Queer Images on 20th Century TV. It's currently on Amazon. You're also a lead historian consultant for Apple TV. It's also based on a docuseries, Visible on TV. And also you did After Stonewall, Letters to the Open Mind.
I was the lead historical consultant for Visible Out on TV. I was a researcher, one of many researchers for After Stonewall. In The Open Mind, I am a voice. I am a disembodied voice in the film.
You are. Okay. Well, we're talking about some of your work. And before we talk about your book as well, too, tell us how you first got started.
Well, this book actually began when I was a student in the 80s, late 80s. I was a grad student, and I was volunteering with an organization that was called Gay and Lesbian Peer Counseling of Philadelphia. It was a crisis hotline that was sort of, targeting the gay and lesbian community. And we were getting a lot of calls at that time from teenagers who said, I think I'm lesbian or I think I'm gay, and I'm contemplating suicide. It was very, upsetting to hear. And when I talked to the other volunteers, they were getting a lot of those calls too. And what our clinical supervisor told us to do is, if the caller is calm enough, ask them what they think gay people's lives are like, right? To see what they think they are, quote unquote, doomed to, that they felt so hopeless. And they always answered the same thing. They always answered, I only know what I see on TV. And of course, this was a very different time. Not a lot of gay people were out of the closet. There were not really a lot of gay celebrities or politicians or, so they were just looking out into the culture, and all they were seeing reflected back were either horrible stereotypes in the media, or they were seeing news coverage of gay men dying of AIDS. It was, not probably the best environment to be coming out in as a teenager. So it got me thinking about the impact of media images of minorities in general and of LGBT people in particular. And I started researching it. I was working in an office job at an insurance company right near the Free Library of Philadelphia. And every day at lunchtime, I would do about 45 minutes of research and then go running back to the office. And I really didn't think I was going to find that much. I thought maybe I would find, enough material for a couple of articles for a magazine or something. And 11 years later, in 2000, it was a 500-page book. And this year, the 20th anniversary revised photo illustrated edition came out.
Wow, that is amazing. What was that precise moment that influenced you into writing the book and saying, this is the time to write the book? What was that precise moment for you?
I think it was, as I was doing the research, what I realized was that in the 70s, there had been this horrible period in the 70s where from about 73 to 75, if you saw an LGBT character on a TV drama series in the U.S., usually they were a serial killer or a terrorist or a child molester, or, homosexuality was maybe the disease of the week on a medical show. It was not really great. And activists had really worked with the networks to try and get a more balanced portrayal, so that by the late 70s, things were much better. And then by the late 80s, when I was volunteering at this crisis hotline, things had completely deteriorated. So I thought, okay, I'll write this book to sort of look at what it was almost like an activist history, right? Looking at the beginnings of the images in early radio and television, the improvement of the images in the 70s, how those negotiations took place, and then saying, can we do something like that now in the 80s? Of course, now the 20th anniversary edition has a different feel to it. It's sort of more of a historical thing, a way of looking back and using the history of gay media activism as sort of a window into the changing status of, I would say, LGBT people, except that television in the 20th century tried really hard to pretend that bi people and trans people didn't exist. The book covers what little there was of imagery, but it's a way of looking at how far we have come and how some of those changes took place, and using entertainment television as the window into that history.
Mm-hmm. And also you talked about LGBT being portrayed in America on a negative basis. What about LGBT in other countries, like, say, in England, Spain, France, or even Asia, or Japan, or Russia?
Right.
It's like, how is it portrayed outside America?
The Brits and the Australians were pretty far ahead of us. So there were Australian shows with relatively three-dimensional gay characters in the early to mid-70s. Britain, it took a little longer, but they did have some serious, like, one-off dramas in TV movies much earlier on, partly because in Britain, the big debate over decriminalizing male homosexuality happened between 57 and 67. So it was a hot topic there before it was a hot topic here. Right here, we didn't get around to national decriminalization until 2003, so we're a little behind. Spain is a different situation because they were under a very right-wing, very conservative Catholic military dictatorship until the late 70s. So you didn't really see much in the way of meaningful queer characters on Spanish television. By Spanish television, I mean specifically Spain, until much later. And the early examples in the 80s were really not that impressive. It really takes you until around the late 90s, early 2000s. And of course, now Spanish television has all sorts of wonderful shows like Elite, which is on Netflix now, and other shows that are queer inclusive.
Mm-hmm. And what about some of the countries that are in the progress of being ahead? Who are those? And where are some of the countries that are still behind? And where are some of the countries that say, I want nothing to do with this?
Well, I think the worst is large portions of Central and Eastern Europe, where they basically have laws either at the national level or the regional level that say that you can't say anything nice about gay people in a public forum. They are really worried that that there will be anti-discrimination laws, that homosexuality and transgender identity and bi identity will be destigmatized. And so they have these really draconian laws, and so you can't show things on TV. In China, was it? I'm trying to remember what country it was. I think it might have been China, where they showed Will and Grace, but in the dub they sort of elided all acknowledgement that Will and Jack were gay. I think that might have been China. I can't remember which country that happened in. So there are certainly countries where we have a long way to go. There are about 160 some countries where homosexuality is a crime. There are a number where they use what used to be called anti-masquerading laws or anti-masking laws against trans people, with the idea of saying that, well, legally they're just, going about in disguise trying to fool people. So in places where we are fighting against criminalization, obviously entertainment television is not going to be progressive.
Mm-hmm. Right, exactly. And we'll talk about some of the examples as well, too, in the book. But first, listen to the Mike Wagner Show at the MikeWagnerShow.com, powered by Sonic Web Studios. Visit online at sonicwebstudios.com for all your needs. Look at a professional website without breaking your budget. Sonic Web Studios is the answer. Sonic Web Studios offers fast, affordable custom web designs that blow the competition away. Call today, 1-800-303-3960. That's 1-800-303-3960. Or email to support@sonicwebstudios.com. Mention the Mike Wagner Show. Get 20% off your first project. Sonic Web Studios. Take your image to the next level. Also, the Mike Wagner Show can be heard on the MikeWagnerShow.com. You can check our Facebook page at Facebook.com/The Mike Wagner Show. You can download and listen on Facebook, SoundCloud, Spreaker, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Also on Anchor FM, Radio Public, iTunes, Google Play, and over 25 podcast platforms. Take the Mike Wagner Show with you on any mobile device. Subscribe to the Mike Wagner Show on the YouTube channel. Also follow the Mike Wagner Show on Instagram and Twitter today. We're here with author and Stephen Capsuto of Alternate Channels, Queer Images on 20th Century TV, available on Amazon here on the Mike Wagner Show, just celebrating its 20th anniversary and a brand new edition. And of course, the first edition was a semi-finalist for the Stonewall Book Award. And you also had some examples in the book as well, too, including such classic icon TV shows like All in the Family, In Living Color, Soap, Women of Brewster Place, Mike Douglas Show, Friends, Ellen, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and more. And tell us about some of those programs that you had in the first book, and then how were they done different, or did you keep them the same in your revised book?
So the revised edition does a few things. I mean, first it adds photographs. The original edition was published by Ballantine, and because we were sort of on a tight schedule at the last minute, they decided not to put any photos in. The new edition has about 100 photos, and so there's some additional material in there because there's, like little one-paragraph captions under the photos. So we have more information there. So like Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the whole Willow and Tara thing had started like, I don't know, 3 weeks before the book was finalized in 2000 or something. I mean, there was a little bit in late 99, but it really starts to take off in early 2000, if I'm remembering right. Mm-hmm. And so I got a little more into the photo captions than I had in the original text. There were shows that I could not find recordings of the first time. It was before the internet, and a lot of shows some shows were thought to be lost, not to survive at all. And later recordings of them were located in different archives. So I went through, I fact-checked things. I fixed quotations from shows where I had been quoting from secondary sources. There were some places where I had the timelines a little bit wrong. So the first sort of famous trans person in the U.S. was a woman named Christine Jorgensen in the 1950s, who I think wanted to live a very private, quiet life, but was outed by a friend of her family and became famous in the press without wanting to be. And then she started doing some talk show appearances and public appearances. And in any case, this is the early 50s. And I had the timeline of her early media appearances wrong, so I rewrote that section. There were things the original publisher cut that were put back in, but mostly it was a question of just re-fact checking everything from the beginning, page by page, and fixing the things where I have better information now.
Mm-hmm. Also included All in the Family, which I remember was the first program not only break the transgender barrier, but also the political barrier, also the sexual barrier, the racial barrier. They broke every barrier in the book. And, tell us about how All in the Family, just broke the barrier of LGBT.
Yeah, well, it was a show produced by Norman Lear and Bud Yorkin, who really changed the face of American situation comedies. If you think about what American sitcoms were like before, let's say, 1971, an alternative family meant the Brady Bunch, right? It was what I think Norman Lear once referred to shows about happy white people with happy white problems. There was like no acknowledgement that there was, racism or poverty or, alcoholism or anything that wasn't just very comfortable. And what happens in the late 60s, early 70s is the networks change how they make money. It used to be that you would charge the advertisers based on how many people watched your show. So a show with a lot of viewers, you could charge more per 1 minute of advertising. And what they started to do is, rather than looking at raw numbers, they started to break down the viewers demographically. And college-educated urban viewers were suddenly worth more money. And so the sort of issue-oriented television starts around 1967. There are examples before, but starting 67 to about 71, there's an explosion of these very, sort of hard-hitting shows. And All in the Family is the first American sitcom I remember to take on issues like racism and all sorts of social justice issues and tell them in the context of the story of one family where very conveniently the father is this sort of, right-wing racist. The son-in-law is this activist hippie, and the daughter and the mother are sort of caught in the middle. The mother is sort of the show's moral conscience, Edith Bunker, who's, the kind-hearted person who can see good in everybody. And it's remarkable. I mean, you think about, and that was a huge hit. And because that got ratings and made a lot of money, all of a sudden the networks were willing to let, especially those particular producers, do other issue-oriented shows.
Mm-hmm. And also, it makes you think back in the day, too, like you had, going to black comedies like The Jeffersons, What's Happening, Good Times, and others. And what are some of the black sitcoms that started breaking into the LGBT sector, or maybe just a hint of it? Which ones?
The earliest example I remember was on Sanford and Son, which was also produced by Norman Lear. And both Sanford and Son and All in the Family were American remakes of British sitcoms from the 60s.
Oh, really?
So Steptoe and Son in Britain had been white, but they were like abjectly poor junk dealers. Sanford and Son were a little less poor. They had a 2-story house, they had a truck. But that show did occasionally deal with gay characters. The gay characters tended to be white because I think, the idea back then, and gay characters in general tended to be white through most of the 20th century. I think there was this fear of offending two different minority groups at once. So
meathead. I can imagine that right now. You meathead, why'd you say that? You big dummy.
Yeah, but All in the Family did. I mean, off the top of my head, I can think of 5 really strong episodes dealing with queer characters. One right near the beginning of the series where the son-in-law and the daughter have this sort of effeminate male friend, and Archie is convinced that guy is gay, which he isn't. But it turns out that one of Archie's drinking buddies, who's an ex-pro ball player, is gay, who doesn't fit the stereotype. And then there's a wonderful episode where Edith's cousin Liz has died, and they go to the funeral, and it turns out that her roommate, the other quote-unquote old maid school teacher that she's been living with, has been her partner for 25 years.
Oh, wow.
And it's a beautiful episode, won an Emmy, lovely episode. And then there's the 3 episodes with Beverly LaSalle, who is sort of like an ink blot test. People project their own expectations onto that character. So I know people who read the character as trans. I know people who read the character as a, gay cis male drag artiste. Different people read the character differently. And the character Beverly appears in 3 episodes over the course of 2 years. And in the last one, Beverly is murdered. Oh, wow. It's one of the first examples I can think of TV dealing with anti-gay violence or anti-LGBT violence. And I tend to read the character as a gay male drag performer. Beverly was killed on the street while, if I'm recalling right, in male clothing. So it wasn't a matter of targeting gender nonconformance. It was just that they read him as a queer man of some sort. Mm-hmm. And, All in the Family, this was a time when you didn't get, All in the Family was all about telling stories that hadn't been told before. And anti-gay violence was a huge problem, just as anti-trans violence is today. Anti-gay violence, up until fairly recently was a huge, huge problem. It still exists now. And TV was largely ignoring it. And here they said, all right, we're going to take this character, we're going to make you love this character over the course of 2 years, and then you're going to lose Beverly.
Mm-hmm. And also you said that All in the Family was based on a British sitcom. And what was the name of that British sitcom that was based off of? I didn't catch that.
It was called Till Death Us Do Part. It debuted in the mid-'60s, was created by a guy named Johnny Spate, and the Archie-like character, Alf Garnett, is actually much harsher than Archie. Archie is more lovable. Alf is this hard-drinking, mean. He's mean to his wife. He's mean to the kids. He's just mean. And I saw an interview with Johnny Spade, I think from the 70s, where he said, people said, how dare you create such an ugly character for a situation comedy? And he said, I didn't create Alf. I only reported him. Meaning that character exists in real life. And why should we not talk about what a problem people like this can be?
Mm-hmm. And of course, the person that portrayed that character, did he suffer a permanent backlash, or was it just basically just on a character?
No, Warren Mitchell in Britain and Carol O'Connor in the U.S. were, much loved actors. People knew they were not like the characters they were portraying. There's an interesting story. Someplace in the Watergate tapes, there's a recording of Richard Nixon talking about that first gay episode of All in the Family and how much he hates the show because, Archie is this, good, right-thinking conservative who's being made fun of every week.
Oh, my gosh. Okay. And we'll talk about some of the other shows that involve with TV shows, comedy, and more. But first, listen to The Mike Wagner Show at themikewagnershow.com. It's powered by Sonic Web Studios. Visit online at sonicwebstudios.com for all your needs. Look at a professional website without breaking your budget. Sonic Web Studios is the answer. Sonic Web Studios offers fast, affordable custom web designs at below the competition way. Call today, 1-800-303-3960. That's 1-800-303-3960. Or email to support@sonicwebstudios.com. Mention the Mike Wagner Show. Get 20% off your first project. Sonic Web Studios. Take your image to the next level. Also, the Mike Wagner Show can be heard on the MikeWagnerShow.com. You can check our Facebook page at Facebook.com/The Mike Wagner Show. You can download and listen on Facebook, SoundCloud, Spreaker, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Also on Anchor FM, Radio Public, iTunes, Google Play, and over 25 podcast platforms. Take the Mike Wagner Show with you on any mobile device. Subscribe to the Mike Wagner Show on the YouTube channel. Also follow the Mike Wagner Show on Instagram and Twitter today. We're here with author Stephen Capsuto of Alternate Channels, Queer Images on 20th Century TV here on the Mike Wagner Show. Not only this, also, started in comedy with sitcoms. We talked about All in the Family and also quite others as well, too. This also ventured to the variety and also pretty much variety musical as well, too, like the Mike Douglas Show from the 60s and In Living Color around the late 80s, early 90s. And you can tell us more about that.
Well, sure. At the very beginning, when the earliest sort of queer-ish characters that you saw on American TV were characters that were implicitly gay male characters who were there to be laughed at. There were rules in place early on in broadcasting that you couldn't actually identify a character as gay. There was one rule said sexual abnormality is not an acceptable program topic, and of course, we were considered criminals and mentally ill, and so that was a sexual abnormality. And there was a rule saying you couldn't present criminals in a positive light, and we were criminals. So, but you could play with stereotypes. So you could put this sort of, prissy male secretary character on and have him say that, I'm very delicate. I bruise so easily. I dreamed of being an interior designer, but, when you have to hang drapes, you have to climb ladders and, baruse. Mm-hmm. So that was where things originated. And of course, those were all white characters because most of TV was white at the time. TV took a while to start to even attempt to be more inclusive. And then later, you have more three-dimensional white gay characters. And when you first start to get black gay characters that are seen on an ongoing basis, it's going back to those early stereotypes, those sort of sissy stereotypes. And In Living Color is a great example. It was a sketch comedy series on Fox, mostly black cast, mixed race cast, but largely black. And they had these characters, Blaine and Antoine, the men on film guys. And the premise of these skits was that they were supposed to be these two snap divas who had a public access cable show where they reviewed books and films and things from, as they put it, a male point of view. Mm-hmm. And they were these very broad sissy stereotypes. But what was interesting was where the stereotypes of white gay male characters in the 50s had been straight people's stereotypes of gay people. These characters on In Living Color were like gay people's stereotypes of gay people, which I thought was interesting because what it meant was somebody on the writing staff was plugged into the queer world. I mean, I would watch these characters, and on the one hand, I was thinking, I hope my grandparents are not watching this because it reinforces horrible stereotypes of gay men as being, pursuers of adolescent boys and shallow and hating women and whatnot. But on the other hand, I thought, I know these guys. They reminded me of actual, gay men I knew in Philadelphia. And so I was sort of impressed with the writing while at the same time being a little horrified that, the broad public was seeing this. And then by the mid 90s and late 90s, you have, a better range of lesbian and gay and bi characters across the board than there had been any time before that in the history of television. So by 97 or so, you have the character of Carter on Spin City, who's probably my favorite gay character of the 20th century. But the book Alternate Channels also deals with cop shows rather a lot because you would have all these killer lesbian characters. And what really most got the gay liberation movement in the 70s into media activism, sort of the last straw amid all these portrayals of queer killers, was there was an episode of, I don't know if you remember, Policewoman starring Angie Dickinson.
I remember Policewoman, yes. That was actually one of my favorites, not because of Angie Dickinson. It was just the show itself.
Oh, it was a great show. It was a really, really good show. And there was an episode where she goes undercover at a nursing home that is run by this gang of homicidal lesbians.
Oh,
and the episode is called Flowers of Evil, and it's just a horror.
Flowers of Evil, that is a great name for a death metal group. Flowers of
Isn't it? Yeah. So, I mean, it's from, I think, the old Les Fleurs du Mal, but it's So anyway, that was sort of like the last straw, and that is really what got the movement involved with heavily lobbying the media, because this was the era when we were first trying to get our rights. We were fighting for decriminalization. We were trying to get anti-discrimination laws passed. And what the public was seeing of us was that we were, a threat to children and went around murdering old ladies in a nursing home. And it just wasn't, the most balanced and fair portrayal of a minority group at that time. So I'm told that chapter, which is called Killer Dyke Syndrome, is what sold the book the first time.
Oh, my goodness. I can imagine that. And, of course, I did mention about Mike Douglas' show. It's a variety show. And how did that break the barrier of LGBT?
Well, it didn't exactly. They were, at the time, all you had to do was mention queer people. This was like a thing with comedians. You would just mention that we existed, and that was the joke. Right? You would make some coy reference to gay people or trans people, and then everybody would laugh. So comedians were doing that on the Mike Douglas Show. And then at some point around 73, I think it was, they were supposed to have some sort of a discussion of gay rights. It was, it wasn't just a variety show. He would have people on occasionally to discuss serious topics. And for whatever reason, that discussion was canceled. I don't know if the syndication company wasn't comfortable. Somebody wasn't comfortable, and it was canceled. And so this local activist, it was a national show, but it was taped in Philadelphia. And this local activist named Mark Siegel, who was, I think, probably 19 at the time, or in his early 20s, and was famous back then for chaining himself to things to promote gay rights. And so he went to the Mike Douglas Show and chained himself to the camera and started shouting about how the show, discriminates against gay people. And so fortunately, a friend of Mark's was there with a camera. And so I have this lovely photo of him, chained to the camera with Helen Hayes and Tony Bennett and a few other people looking perplexed in the background.
I can imagine Tony Bennett. I left my heart in what? I can imagine that was more thing about Mike Douglas just putting every person on, just like Johnny Cash would put on everybody on, no matter what, just to get the message out there or show off the music and everything like that. I left my what are you doing on the camera? I can imagine something like that.
And Mark's an interesting figure. He was this early gay activist. He disrupted TV shows where the networks had been doing these horrible portrayals. He disrupted one of Walter Cronkite's CBS Evening News broadcasts. He disrupted I think the Today Show or Good Morning America, the Tonight Show out in California. Now he's for the last since 1976, he's been the publisher of the Philadelphia Gay News, which is a weekly newspaper.
Mm-hmm. And how was he allowed into studios like that? Don't you think they might recognize him and say you can't go in there? It's like, how did they let him in, or how did he get through?
Well, they didn't know what he looked like, because whenever he would do, like the Mike Douglas Show, he disrupted, but then it got edited out of the show, right? The same thing with the Tonight Show. So not a lot of people had seen him on camera. The CBS Evening News, he's on camera for about 2 seconds before he gets wrestled to the ground. Although Walter Cronkite does come back later and explain what the protest was about. And Cronkite was actually very sympathetic. I think he understood what was going on. And he and Mark then kept in touch for 20 some years. So, because they were both newsmen.
Wow, amazing. And you figured Walter Cronkite would just continue on, because I remember, watching his newscast when Kennedy got shot. He just went about like it is. It's like business as usual.
Oh, he was very calm. And what he starts doing is play-by-play. So he says, well, it seems we have a protest going on here in the CBS News studio. We'll tell you what it's about as soon as we find out. Meanwhile, and he goes right back to reporting on, Henry Kissinger. But what's cool is, so the CBS Evening News would actually do 2 live broadcasts, because some stations wanted it on the hour and some stations wanted it on the half hour. And so he would do it twice, back to back. And so this was the first broadcast. On the second broadcast, he does the story about Secretary of State Kissinger. And then he says, when I tried to present this report on the earlier broadcast, here is what happened. And they showed the tape of the disruption. And he again explained what the protest was about, which I thought was really classy.
That is really classy. You also talked about some of the minority groups in your book, too, from the Mattachine Society, if I pronounce that right, in the 50s.
Yes. Very early Yeah, very early groups that were fighting for, doing really two things, because they had to, because most people were in the closet, so we were invisible not only to society but to each other. They were doing a lot of just sort of self-help stuff within the gay community, but also trying to raise public awareness and try to debunk some of the popular negative stereotypes.
Mm-hmm. And that's amazing as well, too. Once again, author Stephen Capsuto of Alternate Channels, Queer Images on 20th Century TV here on the Mike Wagner Show. You've been fantastic, Steve. Just want to give a big thank you for your time. We'd love to have you back on again soon. And just a few more things. Who are some of your favorite writers growing up or authors?
Oh, wow. Well, I mean, I loved Douglas Adams, who wrote Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy and the Dirk Gently books. Agatha Christie. Who else did I read a lot of? I read a lot of mysteries when I was a kid. But also, I remember when I was like 13 reading Robert Graves's I, Claudius books back to back. So it was a weird mix of stuff I read.
Mm-hmm. And who do you consider your biggest influence in your career?
Well, certainly the biggest influence for my book, Alternate Channels, was a writer named Vito Russo, who wrote a book about gay and lesbian images in cinema that was called The Celluloid Closet. It was later made into a documentary, I think, for HBO. And he was one of the first people to do a whole book on the subject of gay and lesbian images in the media and really analyzing the trends and the stereotypes. And I had the good fortune shortly before he died in 1990 to see him give his Celluloid Closet lecture, where he would bring in clips from everything from like early silent Charlie Chaplin movies up to the present and talk through the history and, again, use that as a window into how the status of gay people changed. And so when I saw him give that talk, I was already writing Alternate Channels, but I thought I could do a talk like this about television. And ever since 1990, I've been doing that, mostly at colleges and film festivals, but more recently I've been doing, online Zoom talks with video clips for libraries and so on.
That is amazing. What are your upcoming plans for 2020 and beyond? What can we expect from you?
Well, I mean, I am very slowly working on a book about LGBTQ images on 21st century television. That is much harder to write because there are now so many networks and platforms and, that there's no easy, simple through story to write. There's no through narrative like there was when there were only 3 or 4 networks, right? It's harder to draw trends. So I might write it up as sort of an encyclopedia of shows, but I haven't decided yet.
And where can we find your book again, Alternate Channels?
So Alternate Channels is on most ebook platforms, if you like ebooks, and it is available as a paperback, both through Amazon and your local bookstores can order it. I will say that I get a little more money if you buy it through Amazon, but I understand not everybody is comfortable buying from Amazon. But just and also so it's a print-on-demand book. The original edition was Ballantine, and they were great to deal with, but there were things they did that I wasn't thrilled with, and I was able to get the rights back and put it out myself, so I would have more control. So anyway, it's print-on-demand, and if you buy it from Amazon, it is on thicker paper, and the photos look better, and the printing is better, but the edition available through other bookstores is also perfectly fine.
And the subtle message is, make Bezos rich, make him a trillionaire. So if you buy through Amazon. And what's the best advice you can give to anybody at this point, Steve? The lesson I took away from this project is just be stubborn. If there's a project you want to pursue, just be, dogged about it. Do a little bit every week and nibble away, and eventually it will get done. That is very good advice. Once again, author Stephen Capsuto of Alternate Channels, Queer Images on 20th Century TV on the Mike Wagner Show. Steve, a big thank you for your time. You've been fantastic. Looking forward to it soon. Once again, tell us about your upcoming projects. What's your website? How do people contact you? And where can people purchase your books?
Okay, so the book you can get through pretty much anywhere that sells books. Amazon has the paperback if you want that edition. If you want to order it through any other bookstore, they can get it through the Ingram catalog. And if you are an ebook reader, you can get it through pretty much any platform. It's on Kobo, it's on Nook, it's on Kindle, it's on Tolino, it's on about 15 different ebook platforms. Wow. As far as finding me, on Twitter, I am at Stephen Capsuto, StevenCapsuto. Capsuto, at Stephen Capsuto. Most days on Twitter, I post a feature called Today in Queer TV History, which often includes video clips so you can see what some of the shows that I talk about in the book look like. I'm also on Facebook. If you search for alternate channels, I post some of the same material. And if you are looking to book me as a lecturer once all of this lockdown stuff is done, you can go to my website, alternatechannels.net.
That's fantastic. Once again, Stephen, a big thank you for your time. You've been fantastic. Looking forward to having you again soon. Do us a favor, keep us up to date. Love you back on 2020 and beyond. You've been great.
Thanks, Mike.
The Mike Wagner Show is powered by Sonic Web Studios. If you're looking to start or upgrade your online presence, visit www.sonicwebstudios.com for all of your online needs. Sonic Web Studios specializes in custom web design, app development, social networking, search engine optimization, domain registration, email marketing, online stores, and more. Since our birth, we have been designing and developing immaculate websites and providing web solutions which are a cut above the rest. As a leading web designing enterprise, we have a team of extremely talented web designers who are well-focused and have the experience of working on multiple web developing platforms such as PHP, Magento, custom WordPress, and more. Sonic Web Studios has been helping businesses of all kinds, whether big, small, established, or startup, impress their audiences with exemplary web solutions. We don't just create beautiful and functional websites. We give you a complete online solution with the main goal of enhancing your yearly revenues. We aim to give your business the online exposure and brand acknowledgement that will help you in achieving increased conversions leading to profitable sales. Call 1-800-303-3960 or visit us online at www.sonicwebstudios.com to get started today. Mention the Mike Wagner Show and get 20% off your project. Sonic Web Studios. Take your image to the next level.
Thanks for listening to the Mike Wagner Show, powered by Sonic Web Studios. Visit online at sonicwebstudios.com for all your needs. The Mike Wagner Show can be heard on Spreaker, Spotify, iHeartRadio, iTunes, YouTube, Anchor FM, Radio Public, and themikewagnershow.com. Please support our program with your donations at themikewagnershow.com. Join us again next time for another great episode of The Mike Wagner Show.